Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. I am your host, Jez FM. The Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast that kind of looks at important topics in business and life and presents them in a sort of fun, lighthearted way. And today we've got a really fun one. We've got Danette doing a one-on-one interview with Filipa Bellette. Now Filipa is amazing, and Danette and Filipa really get into some interesting conversations about how to avoid burnout, but not from the typical ways you might have heard of. This is such a fascinating conversation, and as someone who has experienced burnout, it's definitely an important one. I know a lot of people who are suffering from it. So that's enough from me. I'm going to throw this over to Danette and enjoy the conversation. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.
Hello and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. And today we've got a special podcast where we've got a guest, Filipa Bellette.
Bellette, yep.
Who we call Philly. And Philly has written a great book called Ending Body Burnout. I will shortly be doing a book review on this because it is awesome. We do lots of video book reviews, Philly, so we'll make sure that this comes out shortly. So, Philly, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Filipa Bellette. I'm co-founder of holistic health practice Chris and Philly Functional Medicine, and Chris in that name is my husband. So he's the other co-founder, and we're best known for ending body burnout in busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
Love that. Great intro. Now, as I started reading your book, I learned a bit about your story and why this topic is so important to you. So would you like to share a little bit of your story and how you found yourself where you are today?
Yeah, my story probably goes right back to childhood, but I'll start after my first baby because that's when my health really started becoming an issue. So I just finished, was it 4 or 5 years journey of a PhD, which was really intense. But even before that, as a teenager, I was running very high achieving, overdoing perfectionism patterns. PhD just kind of like magnified it all because I was quite young back then as well. So I was 23 when I started that. Kind of the youngest person at Macquarie University doing a PhD, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome going on as well. I'm like, do I really belong here? So I felt like I had to really overcompensate and work really hard to be able to have a place there.
Yeah.
And then I had my baby on the same day that I got my report back to say that I'd passed. And that was exciting. Well, it was exciting, but I was already so burnt out that I'm like, oh, that's good. What's next? Like I didn't even have time or the mental space to be able to celebrate myself.
Yes.
So Poppy came along. It was quite a traumatic birth. It took about a 3-day labor, lots of interception, ended up having a forceps delivery, had tearing up my bowel and my vagina, and my bladder literally stopped working. So I had no sensation to urinate. Ouch. And I had to have an internal catheter up my wee hole for about 4 months. Yeah, for about 4 months after having Poppy. I was on lots of antibiotics, lots of different complications came from that, and I was in and out of hospital.
Wow.
Body physically recovered from that, but month by month after having my daughter, I just started collecting more and more weird health issues. Like there were gut issues, hormone issues, skin issues, chronic pain in my body, chemical sensitivities, food sensitivities, histamine intolerance. And she turned 1 and I just felt like I was getting worse each month. And I was looking at other mums and they were kind of bouncing back after a few months. And here I was feeling like I was an 80-year-old.
Ouch.
So that's where my journey into natural medicine and really what I've written the book about started. And I first worked on my nutrition. So I read a book called Deep Nutrition where I'm like, oh my gosh, you can heal your body using whole food. This is like groundbreaking.
That's so important.
It was so important. And so as I changed that and, started fermenting and sprouting and eating animal organs and all that sort of stuff, my body was healing, had baby number 2. By this point, I'm like, this is going to be so much better because I feel really good now. Like my lifestyle and nutrition is dialed in. But because the second birth was really nice and second baby slept really well, probably within 2 weeks, I just jumped straight back into business and studying. By then I was running, like starting to get into natural therapies, running my own business and doing extra study to qualify in that. And so, yeah, all the old perfectionism, overworking, high achieving patterns just jumped back in. And my
Yes.
body was not happy. It's like, we're going to send you all the same symptoms and signals because we're not
Ouch.
going back there.
Yep.
And I was really annoyed because I'm like, I feel so much more healthy, but why are my symptoms coming back? And that's when I found functional medicine, which for your listeners who aren't aware of that, that sits in the natural therapies, but it's using evidence-based lab testing that goes beyond what GPs and medical specialists test for. Which was really important for me at that point in my journey because I'd kind of hit a roadblock with my GP.
Yep.
Super lovely lady. She did all the tests though, and in the end, she's like, "There's nothing really showing up. I think it's just part of being a busy mum." When I did my functional lab testing, I discovered I had parasites and yeast
Oh,
infections and detox issues, and I was in adrenal fatigue, and my dopamine levels in my brain were really depleted. So I worked on all that, got better, and then burnout number 3 happened in COVID 2020.
ouch.
And I'm sharing all of these because they literally make the different parts in the book. So
Yes.
it's not just do one thing and you're healed. It's usually requires a holistic approach.
Yes.
And COVID was interesting with what happened to my body and my symptoms. So all the symptoms came back, this time also insomnia, which if I don't sleep, I'm not a happy woman.
Same.
Uh-huh. And again, I'm like frustrated, but I'm like, oh, look, I fixed this once. I'll do it again. I'll run the lab tests. I'll do the supplements. I'll do the diet. But this time, none of my physical
Oh,
or mental health issues budged at all. And that's
ouch.
where I'm just like, I still haven't got to the deepest root of
Yeah.
my own body burnout. So I really dove really deep into what we call in our practice the metaphysical side of healing. And essentially, that's the baggage stuck in the unconscious state. So deep unconscious core beliefs that I had about myself. For me, I believed that I was weak and incapable, which was really mind blowing when I discovered that because I'm like, but look at all the things I can do and I've achieved. What?
Yes.
But my whole behavioral patterns, even when I was trying to heal myself, was trying to compensate from
Mm.
this unconscious core belief that I had about myself.
Yeah, nice. So I started your book yesterday afternoon and I'm already halfway through and it
Yep.
is awesome. So as I said, I'm going to do a video book review so our listeners and viewers can learn more about it. But then share how you set about doing this book, the key things in this book, because I've found your case studies, the science, the tests that you do really fascinating in terms of just understanding what's going on for us. And I really like, because I've started the metaphysical bit about, those deep core beliefs that sit, as you said, in the subconscious. And therefore, unless we really start to explore them, they can hold us back in massive ways.
Yeah. So in the book, it's broken up into 4 sections, and the first section is all about the body systems. So you can't have symptoms without there being something like imbalanced, burnt out, overgrown in the body systems.
Yes.
It's never just physical or metaphysical. It's like one and both because
Yeah.
the mind and body are so connected. So being able to identify those body systems, and the 3 main body systems that we look at in our practice and also that I cover in the book are the neuroendocrine system. So that's all about your hormones, your stress hormones, mitochondria, brain. Second body system is the gastrointestinal system.
Yeah.
So that's looking at pathogens, your beneficial microbiome, your digestive organs. And then the third body system is your detoxification system, which is all about the liver and kidneys. And are you clearing out toxins from your body? Because if you're not, very inflammatory.
Yes.
So all 3 of these body systems are so important. And it's crazy that they're not looked at in standard medicine.
Yes.
I understand why, because you might not necessarily have a diagnosable terminal illness if your mitochondria, for the example, is out of whack or damaged. That's all about converting food into energy.
Yes.
However, it can definitely impact the way that your body feels and functions. And that's
Yep.
where a lot of people find, like, both men and women get stuck in these cracks where they don't fit in the box of standard traditional standard medicine testing, but I will always find things on someone's test when we do functional medicine testing. And it's really nice because it is one validation that it's not just all in their head. They're not a hypochondriac. They haven't just made up these symptoms. There's literally something physical going on.
Yes.
And when we can start resetting, supporting those body systems, healing can happen a lot faster, but it's definitely still not the root cause.
Yes. Tell us more about the root cause.
Yeah. So you can't have symptoms without there being some body system imbalance. So do some lab testing. Let's discover where that is. And then my big question always is why? Why did the body systems burn out in the first place? Because sometimes people stop only at body systems and they're taking the supplements that the lab test says they need to take. They might feel good for a while, which is what happened to me in my second burnout experience. But if the deeper root causes aren't addressed, then at some point you can't outsup the deeper root cause.
Yep.
So I think about, and this is where the next 3 parts of the book come in. There's 3 different areas that are root causes. So the mind, the habits that you're doing that may be nourishing or maybe damaging your body, and also your environment. So when I think about lifestyle, so that would be things like how you're moving, how you're sleeping, how you're eating, and environment. Is your environment clear of toxins? Is it healthy? They're what I call surface level root causes, and they're still really important.
Yes.
If you're eating McDonald's every day, then that's going to impact your body because our body's not designed to eat plastic.
Yes.
Which is essentially what processed foods kind of end up being. Our body's like,
Yes.
we don't even know how to process this. What? And so those things are really important. But then at the deeper level, and again, sometimes when people are trying to heal their body from chronic illness, body burnout, they sort of just stop at the lifestyle stuff, the things that they can see. And then wonder why they're not fully resolving or why they continue having flare-ups of their health issues. So that's where the deeper heal thy mind comes into it. And as I mentioned before, like, it's those deep unconscious core beliefs that are literally the machine that drives everything. So we're sense-making creatures, and we're always, the way that we're perceiving ourselves and our body and the world around us is always filtered through the deep beliefs that we have about ourselves at an identity level.
Yep.
And that's often so intricately connected to with past distressing events, trauma that hasn't been processed and left the unconscious mind, which essentially is the body. And so then that's why people are getting all these symptomatic responses. Your unconscious mind is literally trying to send you messages to bring you back to safety and bring you back to happiness and joy and peace and calm, which is a cool reframe too, because a lot of people feel like their body is fighting against them, but it's actually fighting for you. It's sending you beautiful, loving messages in the form of pain, because that is a great way of grabbing our attention.
And I love that reframe there too, that it is fighting for us, not against us. That's a really good reframe, because I sometimes hear some people like they're just complaining about their body and it's not doing this and it's not doing that. And it actually is working for us. Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about the 3 body systems that we see go into burnout when we've got high achievers, because we've got a number of listeners and viewers who are high achievers, and some of them have been through burnout once or twice. So love to sort of raise their awareness around this.
Yeah. So there's the neuroendocrine system, gut, and detox pathways. Now, probably the neuroendocrine system gets the biggest hit, at least initially. And then if things haven't been resolved, things haven't been changed inside of yourself and your life, then the other 2 systems start burning out. But big ones I would see time and time again, because we work with a lot of high achievers too, your adrenals. So your adrenal glands secrete your stress hormones, cortisol and DHEA. And cortisol is your fight-flight response hormone. And it's beautiful and healthy. It keeps us safe from picking up snakes or standing in front of trucks. And it's also really important for energy production. But if we have been running these overachieving, because there's nothing wrong with high achieving, by the way, like there's nothing wrong with being successful and ambitious until there is. And that's where that balance goes out of kilter, where it's usually actually the energy in which someone is trying to achieve is driven from fear rather
Yes.
than from love, purpose, passion. And maybe there might be that mixed up in it too, but when it's driven by fear, that's where you get stuck in chronic state of stress.
Yes.
And it could be lifestyle too. You might be working massive hours. You then might not be eating very well because you don't have time to cook nourishing food from scratch. You're grabbing convenience foods. Then people's energy levels are dropping. So they're usually using caffeine or energy drinks to try and, get through the workday. And that majorly over time will deplete your cortisol and your DHEA, your stress hormones. And when that happens, you basically go into a chronic state of fight or flight. Your body feels like there is a tiger always chasing you,
Ouch.
even when you're asleep. So that's then when people start having sleep issues, or if they are sleeping, they're not getting into that deep restorative sleep, and it just becomes this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
The other area we think about too is the brain. So in functional medicine, in our practice, we can actually test for neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline. Adrenaline's very similar to cortisol. So that's your stress brain chemical when you're doing all the things. Adrenaline will be spiking, and at some point that's going to deplete and impact energy, mental health. And dopamine's a really interesting one, especially I don't think we have yet tested an entrepreneur and their dopamine levels haven't been depleted, because dopamine is this beautiful neurotransmitter that is all about energy, but also motivation, creativity, joy, excitement. And when those dopamine levels are depleting, which happens when there's chronic stress, then you can start developing addictive type patterns. So that might, for someone, it might be food or cigarettes or alcohol or drugs. For other people, it might be exercise or scrolling on social media or addictively working, because you're constantly trying to find little ways to pull your dopamine levels up. So those little dopamine hits. And the more that you engage in those behaviors, the more dopamine depletes and the more that you want to engage in those behaviors. And that's where, like, for me, I found it really difficult to switch off from work. Even when I went on a holiday or even when I was with the kids on the beach, my whole system was just so geared to working and finding those little dopamine hits that I couldn't ever fully relax and ground myself.
Wow. That would have been hard.
Yeah. So those two, like, definitely important. And your adrenals also impact your sex hormones. So especially for women listening, if you're in like the perimenopause, menopausal stage of your life, often by the time ambitious women get there, their sex hormones are quite depleted. And things can get worse when you move into menopause, because not necessarily worse in terms of the sex hormones get worse, but these symptoms start to exacerbate and really show up in the body. And when you're in this chronic state of fight or flight for too long, eventually your gut's going to switch off. So that would look like you're not able to break down foods effectively anymore. Your immune system gets really suppressed. So you can have nasty parasites and bacterial pathogens in the gut, viral pathogens overgrow in your system. And then when the gut's not working very well, at some point, detox pathways are going to burn out as well, because the major way we get rid of toxins is back through the gut and out through the bowels.
Yep. Wow. So it's much better to prevent than to wait till we get to burnout, is the message I'm hearing there.
Yeah, absolutely. So like being aware of those early signs. It's interesting. I mean, most people that we work with in our practice, their body is now loudly screaming at them, because not a lot of people take action until there's enough pain to be able to do that. We do sometimes get some clients. I remember I had a guy who he filled in his new client initial form, and it's quite big. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, basically, I've got your name and address and phone number, and there's like nothing else on there. Why are
Yes.
you here? And he
Yep.
literally said, I just want a car service. Like, I just want to have a look under the hood,
Clever.
see how my body's going. I don't
Yep.
yet have any symptoms at all. I feel great, actually. And so that's cool because functional medicine at its premise is actually considered, or it was created to be preventative medicine. Not
Nice.
that a lot of people use it like that now, but you know, you can totally do it from a preventative point of view.
Yeah, and much easier, I would imagine. And just in terms of your life, then if you're being preventative, it obviously makes for a smoother life from many aspects.
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting too with this guy that I was mentioning. So we ran some tests. I'm like, okay, cool. If you just want like a thorough workup, let's do these 3 tests. That's going to cover like most of the body systems that I was just mentioning before.
Yes.
His lab test results were probably the worst set of lab test results I've ever seen.
Oh, ouch.
Which also like blew my mind because I'm like, how are you not feeling any symptoms? Like,
Yeah.
what is going on here? But it was so good that he did that because these imbalances do actually lead to things like diabetes,
Yep.
heart disease, cancer. So you're not just preventing from having symptoms, but you are preventing from having chronic illnesses that then can be quite tricky to
Yes.
recorrect.
Yeah. Oh, such a great conversation. So let's switch it up a little bit. And so obviously we're encouraging people to do this. Are there ways that people can boost their performance, but making sure that they don't end up in the burnout state? So what are some things people can do?
Yeah, I love that question. My mind just went to like 5 different things. I'm like, oh, it could be this or this or this or this. Look, I think at the deepest level to boost performance so that you're not just boosting performance to achieve more because it's driven out of fear. Like the best thing to do would be to go straight into the unconscious mind.
Nice.
And actually, first of all, question, why am I wanting to achieve, or why do I want to boost my performance? If it comes from a deep place of alignment and like a higher purpose, and I feel good and it's good for the world when I do this and I feel energized by it, then it's like, awesome, great. You're safe to press the go button. If you're really raw and honest with yourself, so this is where I got, when I started like during that COVID time to really look deep into these unconscious patterns that I was playing out, it was actually really scary because my initial conscious thought was, I have a feeling that when I look into this, I'm actually going to have to give up my business and I'm going to have to stop working and I'm going to have to be a stay-at-home mum in order to be able to be well.
Yep.
So there was this fear that, can I do both? And so that can be really challenging for people when they start inquiring. But in order for me to be able to move forward to look deeper into that, it's like, you know what? Whatever I need to do to be well and to feel happy and to feel peace and calm, I'm going to do it. So if that's what's going to happen, then that's what will happen.
Yes.
The interesting thing was though, so first of all, identified, okay, there's this like very deep seated belief that I'm weak and incapable, which was created when I was like 6, first of all. So it's like, I was standing on a stage and I was about to do a little talk that I memorized and I completely forgot what it was. Burst out crying. I was so humiliated. And then I had to stand on that or sit on that stage as all the other little kids came up and did their talks perfectly, was the way that I perceived it.
Yep.
And then as a little girl, I'm like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not like all the other kids. Maybe I'm like not capable enough. Maybe I'm weak. And then over the days and years and months, I just created more and more evidence around that so that it became really deep seated in my system. And then when I started getting good grades in high school, I actually didn't try. All of a sudden, I'm just like, I'm getting A's and like people are praising me. And oh, okay. Like I started attaching my worth onto what I could achieve. And like literally even as a teenager, I started developing, they're called vasovagal episodes. So fainting, fitting, peeing myself because my nervous system even back then was so dysregulated. And it was all connected to these deeper unconscious wounds that I had. So when I started investigating that, I'm like, okay, I want to perform, I want to achieve, and I have this higher purpose that I really feel like I am in this season of my life, and I've had all these struggles, and I've overcome a bunch of stuff so I can really help other people. So there was like that deep alignment part of me, but then I could also see that there was so much fear underlying that as well, that I had to perform well. I had to have enough money or make enough money. I had to have enough clients in order for me to feel like I was a good practitioner or a good
Yes.
human being, a good entrepreneur. And when I was able to reprogram all of that, it's like, oh my gosh, freedom, like freedom to just show up and serve.
Yes.
And it's okay to have a day off. And it's okay. It's okay if someone says no to a sales conversation
Yes.
because it means nothing about me. It's okay if a client, now I serve wholeheartedly with my clients, but I can't make them do certain things.
Totally.
Sometimes someone chooses to tap out, and that is their agency. But prior to doing the work, there was so much personalization attached to that I'm like, oh, I got to try harder, I got to be better. So like people pleasing and like rescuing was kind of coming into the way that I was running my business as well. Whereas now it's like, I love you, I'm here to serve you, but like I can only go halfway.
Yes.
And it's okay if you don't get results, or if you don't want to do the work to get
Yes.
results. It means nothing about me.
Yeah.
And so that energy shifts. So going back to the original question, how can we boost our performance and productivity? Do that deeper work, because then you're energized by what you do rather than it sucks the life out of you.
Yes.
And then your productivity increases. And what I found was I didn't have to give up my business. Yay. And actually, probably I still work the same amount of hours, but there's a relaxation in my system when I am at work rather than I'm not doing
Yeah.
enough, got to do more, quick, do more. Oh, far out, I didn't finish the to-do list today. I'm like a crap human being. It's like, it's all good. I'm safe. Is there any danger here? No, I'm safe. I'm safe to be me.
Love that. Oh, that's gorgeous. Thank you. And I imagine there's going to be a number of viewers and listeners that are really fascinated about that. And that work is really important work. I totally agree with you. So let's go to the last question. I could talk to you for hours, Philly. Is how do we go about finding greater work-life/family balance
Yeah.
and still not burn out?
And still not burnout. That balance is such an interesting question. And I've pondered that so much for my life as well. I feel like it's so closely connected to what I was talking about before. So I think about, rather than trying to manage my time, which is where a lot of people go when they're trying to balance work,
Yes.
life, family.
Yep.
It's like, okay, if I can look at my calendar and I'm going to do this here and this here and this here, that might work, but still that person, and this was me too, because I was trying to manage balance. And
Yes.
I'm like, okay, yeah, like my week was really balanced this week, but why do I still feel like a tiger is chasing me when I'm reading a story to my children? Or why do I feel guilt, like that tiger was guilt, because I'm like, oh, but I should be over there.
Yeah.
Or why do I feel like I'm going for this beautiful walk along the beach listening to a podcast, and I feel like I have to walk really fast to get back so I can open up the computer?
Ouch.
It's like, ah. So I was trying to manage,
Yep.
I was trying to create balance by managing myself rather than actually accessing deep self-permission. And self-permission can only come from the unconscious mind when it's safe to succeed.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a tricky question, because now I'm like, well, balance isn't so much about what it looks like on my calendar, but how I feel in my body. And you kind of know when you get there, because
Yeah.
it feels like all those important parts are flowy, and it's not always like, the
Yes.
kids are screaming sometimes, or I might have an argument with my husband, or might get an annoying email, but you're also able to self-regulate a lot
Yep.
faster.
Yes.
And able to pay attention to your body signals or your emotions when it's like, oh, I've probably put a bit too much energy in that part of my life because this other part is sort of suffering a bit.
Yes.
And being able to be flexible to move.
Yep.
And just really stay in tune with yourself and what you need.
Mm. And I would imagine that when people are in burnout, flexibility is a bit harder for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is because like a lot of people are just so pooped by then. Like it's like I'm exhausted,
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed. So both like physical energy, it's really hard to be able to change things up.
Yes.
And then mentally as well, there's just so much overwhelm that it's just like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
Um, and that's also, I mean, that's why we love bringing in like the physical and the metaphysical because it's like wherever in that cycle we can put a little wedge to start making change for that person.
Yeah.
Like, and it might be different for different people. A lot of people will start responding to lab-based supplement protocols, for example, where all of a sudden their brain is sort of starting to switch off again, on again. And it's like,
Yes.
oh, okay, my brain fog is disappearing, or I feel a bit
Nice.
calmer. And then
Yes.
it's like, okay, great. Now we can move over into this part of the cycle and start working on your nutrition. It's like, okay, you're feeling better there now. Now let's get to the deep work because we need to do the deep work. Otherwise, this other stuff is just going to be short lived.
Yes. I love that. So we're just about at the end, but I'm curious, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers?
Well, thank you, first of all, so much for having me on your show. It's lovely to have the space to talk about something that I love. Yeah, if anyone is interested in learning more, definitely you can jump onto our website, www.chrisandphilly, that's with an f.fm/book, and you can grab a copy of the book there. It's also on Amazon Book Depository, in some bookstores as well. So if your local bookstore doesn't stock it, they can definitely order it in. Yeah, but I think I'd like to leave your listeners with a message that it's actually like there's so much hope that you can move out of body burnout. A lot of people, when they get to this point, feel like it's so complicated. You might have tried a bunch of things. Maybe you've seen naturopaths, nutritionists, energy healers, psychologists, doctors. Maybe you've even seen a functional medicine practitioner and you feel like you're still stuck. I love to simplify things. So there's only so many ways that the body burns out. And when you can uncover those big rocks,
Yes.
then a lot of things can change actually really fast. Like we literally have clients start our Ending Body Burnout Method program who have been working on trying to heal their symptoms for like 10 years with so many practitioners, and literally within a like 8 weeks, things are
Nice.
disappearing, you
Yep.
know, when you can work on your whole self, not just one part of yourself, because everything is connected, things flow and change really fast.
Yeah, I love that, Philly. And we'll include in our podcast description contact details for you too, so that they've got the website and that as well. And we'll put the book and where they can get that too. So can I say thank you so much for joining us on the Magical Learning podcast. And we've already talked about coming on the Adapt podcast, so we'll also share that as well. So I'm a big hugger, so I'm going to send you a massive big hug.
Thank you. I just got goosebumps, warm fuzzies.
And to our listeners, we wish you a magical week.